Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon, and I've been investing in property for over 20 years. And if you're an active landlord or planning your next property investment, this podcast is for you. If you're able to leave a rating or review in your podcast player, whether that's Apple, Spotify, or something else, perhaps you're watching on YouTube, then I would very much appreciate that. Now, today I am delighted to be joined by Julie Condliffe, who is an award-winning property auction solicitor. And I'm very, very pleased that we're going to do something I think is a bit different for her. And we are going to walk through an example investment property. But before we get started with that, Julie, welcome to the podcast. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Simon, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be on this podcast. And I've never used these headphones before, so it looks kind of like something kind of alien, but it'll work. I'm Julie Condliffe. I am a solicitor. As Simon said, I specialize in auctions and anything property related. So property auction conveyancing, property litigation, and just anything that's got property related connotations to it. Thank you.
Cool. So, actually, before we dig into the property example, I just have one quick question. Why did you choose property law related things when you were getting into your career?
I love that question, Simon, and I'll tell exactly why I love it. Because I don't want to talk about the property thing that you want to talk about. So any other question you give me, I'm going to respond in the lengthiest of ways, just to avoid those other technical questions you want to ask me about my own properties.
I'm not asking anything technical. It's going to be a story. Don't worry.
Fine, Simon. Let's do it. So anyway, just answering this particular question, why did I get into property? That's actually really interesting because when I started my law journey, actually before that, I used to watch a program on TV called Ally McBeal. Well, it's probably not called Ally McBeal, but it had somebody in it called Ally McBeal. It was like a glamorous legal show. And I always used to think, oh my God, I would love one day to do what Ally McBeal did. And I think she was a litigation solicitor. And she would always win all these battles. And growing up, I would look up to her and I'd think that's exactly what I wanted to do. So that's what triggered that. And then my own personal life stories, like when we were made homeless when I was younger, and my homelessness journey, even when I came to Great Britain, all of those things actually pushed me more into property. So when I then studied law, I had a keen interest in property just generally. I still thought that property was quite boring because it wasn't super sexy. It wasn't like litigation and all the other things. But I think it was really my background in relation to poverty, homelessness, and all that was because of property. So I developed a passion for property. So I think if you're passionate about something, you're likely to be on purpose. So if you've been through some pain and if that pushes you into your purpose through the pain and all the rest of it, I think you stand a better chance of being able to make a difference, being able to deliver on anything that you need to do in that particular industry. So that's how I got into property, Simon.
Fantastic. That's better than my story, which is I just like looking at property plans, as in the drawings of property. I always found them fascinating. But anyway,
do you? I struggle to understand those plans. So I only look at title plans. I only look at plans to leases, anything that I need in the legal industry. But anything out of that is just too gibberish for me. It's just totally different. So isn't it interesting that we're both property people, but our perspectives are totally different, and what tickles us totally different too?
Very definitely. There's a very, very wide variety of people in the property world. So yes, it takes all sorts.
It does, yes.
Now on to the bit you're trying to avoid. So
I
understand that. I understand that you are a property investor as well as a property solicitor, and I don't know whether you're going to choose one of your own properties or whether you're going to choose a client property or another property you've got knowledge of, but hopefully you have chosen a property that we can talk through and a project that we can talk through. Okay, not supposed to be shaking your head at this point, but anyway, I'll carry on. So my sort of starting question then is, with this property that you are momentarily going to select from your background and your knowledge, how did you, or how was this property found? As in, did it get discovered on Rightmove, or from phoning an agent, or from an auction catalogue, or whatever it might be? How was it found?
Yeah, sure. So the property that I choose right now in this moment that rushes to my mind is probably not the greatest example to give. Oh God, but I think I should give it anyway. And I'll explain to you, perhaps, Simon, why. Because I think that sometimes when we come on these shows, and sometimes when we go on social media, we talk about our wins, we talk about the positives, we talk about the glamorous things. But you and I know that property investment is not always glamorous. Property investment is not always profitable. There are pitfalls. There are loads of other different things that one could go through in their property investment journey. So I managed to build quite a huge portfolio in my journey. But right at the beginning, I made some fundamental mistakes. So the property that I choose for today, for right now, not today because I didn't think about it before, but in this moment, the property that I choose is my apartment, which I bought earlier on in my career in Swindon. And this property was presented to me via email by a company that promised me guaranteed rent if I bought this new build property in Swindon. So that's exactly how I found it. And when I saw all the literature surrounding it, it just looked super stunning. The property was just, that dream kind of property that you could get like in a gated community, like it's called like the $1 million area in Swindon, or at the time it was. So absolutely affluent area, beautiful property, gated community, all singing, all dancing. Then I thought, oh my God, I could actually own that property. Check me out. And I started going through all the amazing things of, how my life would look like with that property and what people would think about me. Those things are what I focused on at that time. And I purchased the property for £275,000 in or around 2006. So that's how I found the property. And that's the property that I'd love to talk about today, with your permission, Simon.
Of course. Okay, that sounds interesting. So this was you said it was an apartment. So in a block, presumably.
Yeah.
Was it a tall block, a small block? What kind of situation was it in?
Yeah, sure. So it's a ground floor property in a block, and I think it's like 5 levels. So it's got more than I'm sure it's got more than 100 properties there. So I bought a ground floor corner plot with the biggest garden there. So it was the most expensive, but I was told that because it had the corner garden, a larger garden than most, it would be better for me rental wise, and I also got guaranteed rent on it. So that's that.
Yeah, I'm intrigued about that guaranteed. We'll get to that in a second. So this brand new? Did you buy it off plan?
Yes, I bought it off plan. Not only did I buy it off plan, it was at the peak of the market. So it was right up there, at the peak of the market. And you know what happened after that? Oh, good. Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
Yes, yes. I have experiences around that peak as well. But yes,
Have you?
yeah. Although not investment, it was personal property. But yes.
Fair enough.
So getting back to your apartment though, so the the person that introduced it to you, was this a property sourcer, or was this, well, yeah, what kind of organisation was it that presented it to you?
Yeah, it was a property sourcer, and the sourcing company are the ones who would sell this product, and they would tell me how incredible an investment it was, and they would reassure me that they would give me a guaranteed rental, at least for the first, I don't know whether it was 2 or 3 years. So I would have nothing at all to worry about. All I'll just be worrying about is making sure I check my bank account every month, just seeing the ka-ching, ka-ching, cash coming in. So that was super attractive at the time.
Yeah. Did you? did you pay a separate sort of specific fee to them for the introduction of this property?
Yes, I paid a sourcing fee at the time. I'm sure it was like 1,500, and I know that sourcing fees are a lot higher now. So I did pay a sourcing fee, and I was at peace with that because at the end of the day, they did what they said they were going to do. They sourced a property, they found me a deal, and that's it, full stop. So I've got a lot of respect for that. But what I do think is I was quite naive at that time. I really was. So I ought to have done my own research. I ought to have done more at the relevant time because deal sources come in different shapes and forms, just like any other professionals in any other industries. And I just think that I can't blame the deal sourcer because if a deal sourcer sources you a deal, they find it and they give it to you. They've done what they're supposed to do. And I respect that because I also had a time in my own career where I was doing deal sourcing. I would source deals for people. I would give them a deal. If the deal didn't work out, they would come to me and start lashing out saying, this deal didn't work. You sold us a deal. I'm thinking, yes, I did. I sold you a deal. It didn't work for loads of other different reasons. So that's another area that I'm pretty passionate about. If somebody finds you a deal and if it ticks the boxes that you thought you were getting, then that's great. There is also things, that you need to do. Some matters are incumbent upon you. Like for me, in that set of circumstances, they got me a deal. Was it a beautiful property? Yes, it was. Was there potential to get guaranteed income? Yes, there was. Did it happen though? Maybe it didn't. Maybe not for that long. But the reality of it, I got the property. And that's the long and short of it.
So before you did actually get the property, though, you mentioned about needing to check deals that are presented to you from deal sources. So there is obviously a period of time from saying, yes, I'll go ahead, or perhaps even a bit before that, from seeing the deal, between that and actually having the property. You have lots of time to think about things, and obviously there's the conveyancing process, which takes quite a while too. So what did you do during that period? Did you just sort of send a quick yes to the deal sourcer and then get on with your day job and not think about it for 3 months, or what was there more involved in that sort of purchasing process?
Yeah, sure. So the deal sourcer sourced the deal, passed it on to me. They introduced me to solicitors that they worked with. So I started liaising with those particular solicitors, giving them all the information to enable them to do their anti-money laundering checks, client onboarding documentation. And I also needed a mortgage because I didn't have, that cash readily available. So again, I was introduced to a mortgage broker and we did all the numbers and the figures stacked up. And that's it. So I let the mortgage people do what they do, and then I also let the legal people do what they do, and I would liaise with the solicitors. I will also liaise with the mortgage broker. So that's what I did. That was the scope of my involvement, which I think is similar to anybody who is buying or selling a property, whether you buy a property through auction, whether you buy a property through agents, whether you buy a property through deal sources. You get the deal, and then after that, sometimes you're introduced to solicitors, or you get solicitors recommended to you. You liaise directly with them, and you also liaise with, the agents, the deal sourcer, or the auctioneers. So yes, that's what I did.
Okay, cool. And the deal that was presented to you as guaranteed rent, how good was that? What was the sort of return you were expecting and things?
Yeah, sure. So my mortgage was around 1,200 a month, and I was going to get 1,500 guaranteed rent, which I was super duper excited about because that's an extra 300, every month, 300 cash flow, money that I didn't have. So when it started off really, really well. I would always get my money on time. The property was let out to footballers who played for Swindon. So all of that was absolutely brilliant. I had no issues at all in relation to that. But I think the issue was when I stopped getting the guaranteed rental. So I got an email from the agent or the person who was supposed to be giving me the guaranteed rental saying, Julie, times are hard. The property is not let. I don't have money. This company is going to fold. So I am so sorry. I won't be able to give you, the guaranteed rental that you were getting. So I lost it at that point. I just thought, what do you mean? Do you know what the definition of guaranteed actually means? You said I would get guaranteed. rent for 3 months. So that means you guaranteed it. It wasn't you get rent if I get it. I'll give you money if I've got it. It wasn't like that. So how can this actually possibly be? But I was just fighting against the wind because it didn't matter, how irate I was. It didn't matter how angry I was. It didn't actually matter how much I shouted at this person. And bless him, I did shout at him a lot. But that wasn't actually going to change anything at all, Simon. I found myself in an unenviable set of circumstances where I was lumbered with this property. I had a mortgage to pay, 1,300, and the average rentals in the area at the time were 700 or thereabouts. So now, all of a sudden, this investment becomes a liability. I have to pay money every month. I have to pay the tenant to live in my property. Pretty much. That's what it was. Well, not literally, because I was subsidizing the mortgage. But at the end of the day, that's how it felt like. So normally people make money from having a tenant in their property, but I'm having to pay to have a tenant in my property and keep, that property. Otherwise, it would have been repossessed. And what really bugs me the most, though, Simon, is guess what? I still have that property and it's still in negative equity and I still can't sell it. So I feel like screaming.
Oh dear, That's yes, that's a bit frustrating.
Oh God, yes.
So how on earth had they guaranteed a rent of 1,500 when the average rent in the area was 700 though? I mean, what were they thinking?
Well, that's what I thought at the time, and that was part of my conversation with them at the relevant time, which was more shouting, not conversation, but whichever way you look at it. But now, because of what I know, I can see literally how that could have been, because you and I understand different strategies. So if you're letting out a property like a 2-bed apartment, to a family, just a normal buy-to-let in areas where you get 700, if you turn that into serviced accommodation, you could potentially get 1,500 less or even more. So in hindsight, that's exactly what they were doing. Because like I said, we had the Swindon footballers staying there. So it's not like they were staying there all the time. They could pay a premium, so they used it as serviced accommodation. So they managed to command a much higher, rental or much higher income, as it were. So that's just that. Yeah. So I'm sure they were getting more than the 1,500 they were giving me. And they probably had a contract, with a football club. I wasn't privy to that. But I suspect that could have been, the position. So, but in their defense, at the time, as far as I was concerned, they had no defense. They had zero defense. But now, in hindsight, everything looks better, when you're clear-minded, clear-headed as well. We had the property crash, didn't we? So they were also affected by it, as well as I was, as well as everybody else was. So for me to expect them to have continued giving me this guaranteed rental, well, maybe I did have a right, because if people say it's guaranteed, then surely there has to be some degree of guarantee. Maybe they should have an insurance or whatever it is that will kick in if they're unable to fulfill the guarantee that they gave you. So I still stand by that. But also, I see things from their perspective. Nobody had imagined that we were going to have the whole property market crashing down on us. So they were affected by it. They didn't have the money to give me. How can you give something you don't have? They didn't have it. And that's it.
Yeah, quite. Not much more that can be done at that point. So they, how long were they managing the property for you and actually managing the guaranteed rent before it all fell apart?
I think it was about a year and a half.
Okay.
So yeah, half of the period they were going to do it.
Reasonable while.
Reasonable, Simon, with a stretch. Yeah, we're positive today. It's sunny, so we'll say it's reasonable today. Yes.
So when it did all fall apart, presumably they said, "We're going away. There's nothing we can do about it. Here are your keys," and you had to sort of pick up the pieces. So what did you? How did you pick up those pieces and take over the reins?
How did I pick up those pieces? I picked them up one by one. I picked them up tearfully, remorsefully, and painfully. My marriage was on the brink because my husband was just saying, not my monkey, not my circus. You did this. You got yourself into this situation. You get yourself out of it. And because my finances were super tight at the time, I was really struggling to get the money to subsidize this thing. And sometimes what's interesting about relationships, and I know we're not talking about marriage counseling here, but sometimes what's interesting about relationships is when the money was coming in, hubby was happy. The extra 300, that was great. Good times. Well done, Jules. This is good. And then all of a sudden, yes, you're faced with this scenario where not only have you lost the £300 extra that you were getting, you now have to subsidize however many hundreds of pounds. And you need that support. You need that help. Where are you going to get it? And as a property investor, you have to be ready to stand on your own feet. You have to be ready to fall on your own sword. So whatever decisions that you make, 1 minute they might seem super pleasant, super positive, but just have that open mind that what if things don't work? Do I have a fallback position? And I think you should, even if it's not financially, but just mentally being that strong and knowing that things are not always going to work out as I imagined. Things may not work out as I manifested or think I did. Things may not work out as I'd hoped for. So for me, that point really affected me. If it affected me financially, it affected me emotionally, it affected me from a marital perspective. So every way possible, it actually did affect me. And I don't think I'm the only one who's ever been in that set of circumstances. So if anyone is in that position, going through such a difficult time, I want you to know that there is hope. Nothing lasts forever. But I just wish that I was ready mentally to deal with that, because Simon, I really wasn't. All I saw was just the positivity of property investment. All I saw was just the profitability of property investment. All I saw was just the positives. And it's not always that at all. But now I know better. And the reason why I really appreciate that Swindon house is still there. It's doing whatever it does. It doesn't really bother me that much anymore. And if I wanted to do different strategies with it, I could, and I could actually make a lot more money. But the reason why that property is dear to me is it taught me so many lessons. It taught me more lessons that I could have ever learned on just one webinar. It taught me a lot. So because of that, I have, on the back of that, I've managed to create a lucrative, very, very successful property portfolio, because I no longer use my head. Sorry, the other way around. Because I no longer use my heart, I use my head. I focus on the figures. I don't necessarily focus on the feelings. That's the difference. Because at the time, I focused on my feelings. I felt like this was incredible. This is amazing. Look at me now. And I also focused on how people would view me, how people would see me. And most of the times we worry about what people think about us. They've got so much going on in their own lives. They ain't got time to think about you. They really don't. But sometimes we focus on what they're thinking, what are they going to say? And sometimes we make poor business decisions, poor investment decisions based on what are they going to say? Or the opposite of that. I'm going to buy a Bentley and I'm going to show them on social media when you can't even afford it. So that's where we are with that.
So there's so many other questions I'm going to ask, or I would like to ask you sort of from that. But just to finish off that property example, you say you do still have that property, and that it is unfortunately in negative equity, so you couldn't sell it to get back what you paid for it. But you presumably, due to time, have seen rental increases, and obviously for quite a while, interest rates and mortgages went down a lot. So over the years, has that property been profitable?
It's better now. It's feeling a lot better. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not in as much. I don't pay as much as I used to before. I think the rental now is what do I get? I think it's like 1,200 now I get. So we're getting warmer. But here's the thing, though, and I really don't need any sympathy here, because at the end of the day, it's in such a prime area. It's just that I have got loads of other different things that I'm doing. If I wanted, I would be able to double that literally every month, by, like I said, serviced accommodation. I could do that. And it's a ground floor apartment, so I could even do supported living. There are loads of different strategies that I could actually utilize if I chose to. But because it's in Swindon and I live far away from Swindon at the moment, I just don't have the bandwidth to be dealing with too many things. But hopefully, after people watch this podcast, they're probably going to message me saying, Julie, I live in Swindon. I can give you a guaranteed rent.
So would you recommend that people look for guaranteed rents these days?
Well, here's the thing. Oh, God. The thing about me is I'm just so transparent. What you see is really what you get. So, okay, let's discuss guaranteed rent for a minute. Like I said before, how do you define guaranteed rent? Because I think guaranteed rent is, most of these people who offer guaranteed rents, they're people with a genuine desire to pay you rent every month. They have a real, genuine desire. They are making a commitment to say to you, I will do my utmost to make sure that your rent is paid. Genuinely, I mean, I think it should be called something like genuine intention or genuine something. You can't call it genuine rent because there's no rent that's, not genuine. But they've got genuine intentions. But what I've learned, even on my own portfolio, I've given some properties out to people and they've promised me guaranteed rent. Even post Swindon, I've done that, but not just me. I've got clients of mine who have given properties to people and they have been promised guaranteed rent. Sometimes they get the guaranteed rents for the duration, but sometimes these people, with all the best intentions, yes, life happens sometimes. They fall on hardship or something happens in their lives and they can't provide the service that they thought they would be able to provide. So I don't believe in guaranteed rents. The only time I believe in guaranteed rents is when somebody gives me their own personal guarantee. If it's in a company name and you give me your personal guarantee and your name is worth something, like you've got some assets, or if it's a company that's giving me guaranteed rent, do they have assets? Because some of these companies that offer you guaranteed rent, they're newbies. They are people who don't even own a house themselves. So on what basis are they guaranteeing that? Do you see what I mean? There's no collateral. So for me, unless if you've got assets to fall back on, if you fall short on your guarantee, unless if you've got that, then no, you can't give me a guaranteed rent. You can't give me any guaranteed rent. You have got a genuine intention to pay my rent. I get that and I respect that, but there's no guarantees around here.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. So you're right. The majority of people who offer guaranteed rent, as you say, do have every intention of sticking with that. But as you say, life happens, and it's not always the way life works out. So
No.
I'm very intrigued. You chose that example property, which was, I think, fascinating to walk through. But these days, you specialize in properties from auction. And I was naively assuming you were going to pick a property that was purchased at auction. But why have you chosen to specialize in auction purchases and auction properties?
Yeah, I love that question, Simon. It's because post Swindon, I did a few other things. And then when I started I did creative strategies. That's what I did. And then when I started buying again, I wanted to utilize auctions. So I started buying at auctions, and my first auction property was at Barnard Marcus auctions. And I love Barnard Marcus, by the way. They're good. I would recommend them. So I started buying at Barnard Marcus auctions, buying properties there. and I built quite a big portfolio of auction properties. But as I was buying those properties, Simon, I struggled to get solicitors who could deal with timelines of auctions, because sometimes you've only got 14 days to complete. Sometimes you've got 28 days to complete. So really, really tight timelines. And sometimes the solicitors would perhaps take a week or even longer onboarding you. So the whole client onboarding process sometimes was quite lengthy. And when I've got a 14-day completion and the solicitor on day 10 is still asking me for my ID, that's not going to work, do you see? So because of that, I thought, okay, surely there's a need in the marketplace. I'm not the only person who's experiencing this pain point. So how can we provide a solution to that? This is a challenge. How can I be a solution to this particular problem? So that's when I went and set up my own practice, which focuses on auctions. So helping people like me who want to buy at auction because of the need for speed, and also people who want to sell at auction because you would want somebody who knows what they're doing and who speaks your language as well. It's a bit like, if you're unwell, it's great to go to a GP, but if you've got a real neurological problem, you don't want to go to just a GP. You want to go to your neurologist, don't you? And, all the rest of it. So I am that specialist when it comes to auctions, and it's only because of my own auction journey. So not only do I understand the law, I walk the walk, so I talk the talk and walk it. Can't get much better than that, Simon, can it, really?
No, indeed. That is the way to bring things together.
Absolutely.
Why you mentioned that quite a lot of your own portfolio has been bought at auction, and that was sort of what spurred you into learning and creating solutions in that space. Why did you choose to be looking at auction properties for your own purchases? Were you finding that that's where the deals were, the bargains, or did you like the instant gratification of purchasing so quickly?
Do you know what, though? I think it's a bit of everything, if I'm to be brutally honest, because I didn't wake up and think, oh, yes, I would love to buy at auctions and that's what I'm going to be doing. I didn't. I was just looking for low value properties, because I had very little money at the time. And the property that caught my eye happened to be a property at auction because the guide price was super low. I think it was below 15,000 as a guide. So I thought, oh my God, how incredible. I can actually afford that. So then after that, it was just one thing after the other. And obviously, I bought it at auction successfully. But I use the term successfully very loosely, because mine was the winning bid. But that's because I am just a natural born winner. I have to win. So I was going to bid until the cows came home. Literally, I was just going to keep bidding because Julie wins and I was going to win. And I learned quickly that, okay, we don't do that. We don't do that in the auction world. It doesn't matter whether you lose. Sometimes losing is actually winning. So I had to have a conversation with myself about that, Simon. So we're fine now. Myself and I are okay. We don't necessarily need to win when it comes to auction because sometimes, not even bidding or not even winning is the biggest win that you could ever have. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. If you get carried away with that bidding and the desire to win that property, yes, you may not win at the investment game, even if you do win at that property.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you've worded it actually articulately. That's incredible.
We're nearly out of time, but I think just one quick question about sort of the general auction process. And I've never actually purchased at auction. I have been to a couple of property auctions and been in the room and watched the process and things. And there have been properties that I've been curious about in those auctions, but I've never actually bid and I've never actually purchased at auction. So I'm curious, for a layman such as me in the auction world, could you give us a very quick, because we are nearly out of time, overview of sort of how that auction process works and what are some of the key things that people who are new to that process should look out for?
Yeah, really good question. I'm surprised you haven't bought at auctions, Simon. We need to drag you into auctions. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself, from, the adrenaline, from the speed, from the certainty, all the rest of it. So loads of positives in terms of buying at auction. But what I would say is before you buy at auction, get educated on auctions, have a really good understanding of how auctions work. Like basic things, like I said, when I started, I thought I needed to bid until I won. You don't, stick with your figures, calculate. It's a numbers game. So have your figures and don't let the emotions get the better of you, because that's not going to work at all. So that's that. Have a figure, set in mind, literally, and don't go beyond that. Some of the best deals that my clients are currently getting in this current marketplace are deals even after the auction. So not winning in the room may not actually be losing, because post auction, you'll be able to negotiate. And sometimes there's more leg room to negotiate, because as vendors, normally when we go to auctions, we are super optimistic. But if the property doesn't sell, dependent on one's circumstances, they may be more incentivized to sell. So that could be a game changer for you. Maybe not the price, but even the timelines, because sometimes you've got tight time deadlines. You've got 14 days, you've got 28 days. Post auction, you could negotiate a much longer time to enable you to even get a mortgage if you needed to. I don't recommend mortgages and auctions, but if you've got a longer period of time, why not? So if you're buying at auction, make sure that your financial house is in order. Make sure that you've got your finances sorted out. If you're getting bridging, make sure that you've got it ready and that the money can be delivered, because most of the other issues that we get are people that don't complete on time. Then you'll be lumbered with the financial penalties of late completion. And if you don't complete on time, you could be liable for damages. So if you're going at auction, you also need to read the legal pack. Not only do you need to read it, you need to read and understand the legal pack, because you've got a lot of legal jargon in there. If you don't understand it, you've got amazing people like me. You can come to me and I can help you read and understand it. Of course, I'll charge you a fee because I'm a solicitor. That's what I do. And that's just that. And I'm also offering a training program to people who want to be able to read and understand the legal pack themselves. So I can help you with that, Simon. I think this has been really good. And I've been a great person, haven't I? Because you made me talk about that property thing that I didn't want to.
I'm not sure that's really what we should be saying. But anyway.
I can cut that one off if you
wish. We are unfortunately needing to draw this to a close. So it remains for me to say thank you very much, Julie, for sharing your experience and your expertise with everyone today. There will be contact details for you in the show notes if anyone would like to reach out and learn more about how to read auction packs, or indeed just to get you to do it for them. But if they want to know now, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you so very much, Simon. I had such a great time. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If people want to get in touch with me, the quickest way would be just on LinkedIn, perhaps Julie Condliffe on LinkedIn, or our website, which is Creative Legals with an S, creativelegals.com. My email address is julie@creativelegals.com. Please do get in touch. Simon, thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. I hope all the listeners have enjoyed it as much as I have. And to all those listeners, I will speak to you again next time.